Chapter 41, Misty Mountains Movement. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If everything we've seen echoes in memory and there are familiar signs, then this door is truly something else. Magic, spirits, or incredible craftsmanship, those have a place here, but this doesn't belong. Gandalf stared at the gate of hell, lost in thought. Yet, it exists, so it's been allowed. I guess it's a new tune on an old instrument. Too bad I can't see it for myself. Nothing much to see, Levi chimed in. Just lava, red rocks, some busted-up ruins, and leftover creatures. Even so, if you dug deep enough, the whole place was probably the skeleton of some megabeast, and the ruins were the remnants of a lost civilization. Sounds a little like Moria. Gandalf sighed, shaking his head. Honestly, I'm blown away by all this, especially that you're running this massive territory solo. I figured it'd be packed with people, not just those iron puppets. Just then, one of the puppets clanked over, eyed Gandalf, and scratched its head, then it presented a little red flower. Oh, thank you. Gandalf carefully took the flower and tucked it away. Clang, 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 the puppet went back to its patrol route. Mission accomplished. That puppet was a peach, handing out flowers to everyone, not just kids. It's just easier to do most things myself, Levi explained. Still, if anyone needed a safe place, he wouldn't turn them away. Maybe it was time to think about it. Unlike Falodin, who was always in and out, when Levi invited Gandalf to hang around for a few days, the old wizard jumped at the chance, snagging a guest room right away. He was polite as always, answering all of Levi's questions. Hanging with Gandalf felt natural. He knew as much and had just as good of manners as Elrond, the Lord of Rivendell, but they had different vibes. Gandalf was way more laid back. The days flew by. One morning, Gandalf found Levi to say goodbye. Thanks for your hospitality, Levi, but I need to get back on the road. Safe travels. Gandalf nodded. It's been memorable, especially your cooking. I was almost tempted to stay. I have a hobbit friend who says the same thing. A hobbit? No surprise there. With your cooking, no hobbit could resist you. Well, duty calls. I'm off for some adventure. Gandalf grabbed the packed lunch Levi gave him and got ready to head out. Adventure? Levi asked. Yep, adventure. Levi was getting antsy. Not counting hell, it had been a while since he'd stepped outside. Gandalf looked at Levi and nodded. Speaking of adventure, I have some work that might interest you. Of course, if anyone wants to tag along. A little later, Levi, decked out in dark netherite armor, straddled a 20-speed horse with diamond barding, asking, "Where are we headed?" Gandalf was silent for a moment. Levi, this is an adventure, not a war. Lose the horse. You'd be better off laying low like me. Helps to blend in. Okay, good point. Levi looked at his gear, then at Gandalf's outfit. Gandalf's grey robes were perfect for roughing it, windproof, rainproof, and inconspicuous. Practical, but Levi was used to wearing full armor. It felt weird taking it off, like going out without his pants on. Finally, after Gandalf kept at him, Levi reluctantly pulled off his helmet and stashed it in his pack. He threw on a plain, oversized cloak that completely hid his dark armor. With the hood up, he looked like a wizard. Truthfully, the netherite armor looked pretty good. It wasn't bulky or heavy, even a bit streamlined. And the armor never slowed Levi down. Now, Levi looked like a dusty wilderness ranger, except rangers wore leather. Scratch that, he looked more like a wandering knight. Okay, fine, if you don't mind lugging all that armor around. It's nothing, Levi replied. Weight didn't bother him. Then let's go. Gandalf waved and pointed. Levi looked. The Misty Mountains. Right. The orcs in the Misty Mountains have been getting bold, wandering into the valleys. They're probably up to something. I need to find out what. Levi paused. I know a little about that. They might be after me. They sent hundreds of wolf riders to attack me a while back, but I wiped most of them out. Things have been quiet lately. No orcs have come near since that last attack. What did you do to make them hate you so much? Levi checked his reputation. Misty Mountain Orcs, -370, mortal enemy. Nothing, like I said, I just killed hundreds of their wolf riders. Gandalf stared at Levi. Okay, half our questions are answered. But there's more. Besides the activity west of the Misty Mountains, they've sent spies east. They're retaking old fortresses from the Dwarf-Orc Wars. I don't know what they're planning. Gandalf was worried. Sounds like a trip. Levi hadn't been farther than Rivendell. It would be nice to have a guide who knew Middle-earth. Chapter 42 Blocking the Door. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. For both Levi and Gandalf, travel and adventure were just part of life. Coming straight from hell, Levi found Middle-earth almost relaxing. At least he didn't have to constantly breathe in the sulfur and deal with the intense heat. The heat didn't really affect him, but he still didn't like it. So, where to now? Levi asked. There were two ways through the Misty Mountains, straight through the mountain passage or a long detour north through Isengard. High Pass, Gandalf answered. That place could be a little dicey, right? Seems like there are a lot of orcs there. An orc town was nearby, housing the very orc king who wanted Levi's head. There are two paths through High Pass. We'll take the higher one and try to skirt around them. All right. Levi had only asked out of curiosity. With his current gear, he could fight his way out of the town if he really had to. His trip to hell hadn't been a waste. The gold he found in the Piglin fortress had made him rich, and he now had a stack of golden apples in his pack. As long as Gandalf was good, he was good, but High Pass, it wasn't just orcs there. A little creature lived in the underground streams deep within the mountains. Gollum, a golden ring glinted in his eyes. Even without horses, Levi and Gandalf moved fast, stopping only to eat. Levi didn't need rest. As long as he had food, he was good to go. As for Gandalf, the old man didn't look like much, but he was tougher than he looked. After seeing that Levi didn't need a break, he stopped mentioning it. They crossed the wilderness, over the final bridge, and on a sunny morning, they arrived near the Misty Mountains. Looking at the towering, snow-capped peaks, Levi couldn't help but be impressed. The Misty Mountains. No time to sightsee, Levi, we need to move. Gandalf called from ahead, we need to get through the pass while it's still light, before the nighttime orcs come out. Got it. They started climbing, not stopping all day, even during meals. Despite their caution, trouble found them. Roar. A low growl made them stop and look around. Gandalf gripped his staff, Levi drew his glowing elven sword, but the attack never came. They exchanged glances and slowly approached the sound. Behind a large rock, 2 wargs and 5 orcs were arguing. I found it first, it's mine. Just because you said you found it? It's right here, why can't it be mine? Roar, that they seem to be fighting over something. Animal carcass, Gandalf whispered. Looks like they're squabbling over who gets the biggest piece. The wargs think they should because they're bigger, but the orcs think they deserve it for finding it. Wargs and orcs fighting. You don't see that every day, Levi said. Those wargs aren't just dumb beasts, Levi. They're smart, and they have their own language. They cooperate with the orcs, they don't serve them. No wonder they're hard to train. Gandalf glanced at Levi. You usually only get them to submit if you're evil. They're wargs, after all, not just wolves looking for a snack. Levi shrugged. They weren't really talking about the same thing, but it was close enough. Suddenly, one of the wargs twitched its nose, raised its head, and looked around. I think we should get out of here, Gandalf said. Nah, I think we should get ready to rumble. Roar, a warg charged towards them. Levi just stepped out, drawing his sword and swinging, bang. As the sword hit the warg, it burst into flames, and the warg became a wailing fireball. One swing and the warg was a charred corpse. Gandalf stared at the elven sword, then at Levi, squinting, lost in thought. Seeing they were outnumbered, the orcs had wanted to jump them. But when the troops saw Levi's dark armor and the flaming sword, they turned tail and ran. Even the warg ran off, they weren't dealing with a nobody. Why would they fight to the death? They needed backup. Done. Levi sheathed his sword. Looks like I can take it easy on this trip, Gandalf said, sounds like someone slacking off. Let's go, before they send word back. It was getting dark, Gandalf led the way, and they finally reached the end of the downhill path. They were about to leave the snowy mountains, whoosh, an arrow bounced off Levi's breastplate, health bar untouched, they turned to see a large group of orcs crowding the pass, throwing weapons and shooting arrows. Run! Gandalf yelled, ducking a scimitar, and turning to leave, but Levi looked at the narrow pass and grinned. I don't think so, swish, drawing his sword, Levi put on his helmet and ran towards the orcs, blocking the pass, bang. One swing cleaved the front orc in half, the impact also staggering the orcs next to him, bang. Another swing swept several orcs back, knocking down others and spreading fire. Levi blocked the pass, raising his sword, letting the orcs hit his armor, unmoved. One orc broke through and struck him, but his health bar barely moved. Looking at the orc's weapon, it was broken. This was nether alloy. Soon, charred corpses covered the ground. The blood had initially spurred them on, but as the corpses piled up, the smell of burning flesh took over, and the orcs, usually responsible for spreading fear, now felt it themselves, fear. It's him, the wild wizard. One orc recognized him and screamed. The orcs and wargs retreated, staring at the black armor. A warg trembled and howled. Come on, you scums, try to get past me. Watching the orcs' fear, Gandalf had a sense of déjà vu. When Sauron walked out of the tower and descended Mount Doom, facing the army of the Last Alliance, that had probably been a similar sight. I wonder who would win in a fight between the two. Chapter 43 Planning. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Buzz, deep underground, right below them, a ring vibrated. My precious. A grimy hand clutched it tightly, caressing it. The more powerful someone is, the easier it is for them to be blinded and deceived by that power. But in the end, they'll always get burned, because there's only ever one true owner of that thing. Isildur, who possessed the ring, fell under its spell near the volcano and ultimately perished in the Gladden fields, south of here. The ring was lost there, either swallowed by the swamp or carried out to sea. At the base of the mountain, Gandalf led the way, recounting the major historical events that had unfolded in this area. Levi trailed behind, listening silently and nodding occasionally. You think if you just punted him into the volcano, none of this would have happened? Gandalf shot him a look. Destiny follows an inevitable path. Levi, even if we replayed that scene 100, 1,000 times, the scenario you suggest would never come to pass. Too many variables. Alright, I'll take your word for it. They walked and talked, occasionally discussing various topics, enjoying a leisurely pace. It was as if the battle they just fought was nothing more than a fleeting dream. Levi, of course, wasn't trying to start a war with the orcs. After initially holding the line, he'd fought a strategic retreat. Maybe the orcs were afraid of getting killed, or maybe they were just caught off guard. Whatever the reason, their pursuit was surprisingly half-hearted, and the two of them were out of the mountains in no time. Then again, Gandalf had a nagging feeling about Levi. On one hand, the guy seemed clueless about history. On the other, he possessed ancient, almost forgotten secrets. Yet, if you asked him about basic historical facts, things that even commoners would know, he'd just shrug and say, beats me. It was a real head-scratcher. Shoo! On a plain some distance from the Misty Mountains, Gandalf suddenly stopped and gestured for Levi to be quiet. Orcs. Roar. Accompanied by the low growl of wargs, a group of orc riders crossed the plain and headed in a specific direction. My guess is there's an orc stronghold, or at least a camp, over that way. Gandalf cautiously peeked over a rock, watching the riders disappear into the distance. So, what do we do? Wipe them out. Whoa, hold on there, partner. That's way too risky. There are only two of us, after all. He glanced at Levi's carefree expression, and his voice trailed off. Come to think of it, maybe it wasn't impossible. I think we should scout it out first. We need to know what we're up against. Sounds good. Despite his casual demeanor, Levi had some reservations. He knew better than to underestimate an orc army, especially if they accidentally stumbled into a major encampment. There was strength in numbers, and even he had his limits. Let's go. Following the orcs' path, they used their cloaks for cover and soon reached what appeared to be a noisy fortress, but it was less a fortress and more a makeshift camp cobbled together from the ruins of one. A mini-boss orc with a bit more muscle and aggression was leading the group. The rank and file were milling around the dark, damp camp. Every so often, shouts and curses rang out as some orcs got into fights. A dozen wargs and 20-plus orcs. Gandalf quickly sized up the enemy's forces. See. He pointed to 2 orcs brawling in the distance. The word unity doesn't exist in their vocabulary. They'll squabble over anything. I bet we could stir things up a bit and get them fighting amongst themselves. Gandalf picked up a small stone, breathed on it, and tossed it at a dozing orc. Who did that? The orc next to him was startled awake by the yell and immediately grew angry. What's your problem, making so much noise? Did you just hit me? Yeah, so what if I did? Snap. The awakened orc threw a handful of stones, hitting the other orc square in the face, blinding him. Scumbag. Enraged, the blinded orc roared and charged. The 2 orcs grappled with each other. This was pretty standard fare in the orc camp and didn't attract much attention. The other orcs simply watched, enjoying the spectacle. Eventually, one of them collapsed to the ground, bruised and battered, unable to move. Ha! The victor spat on him. Gandalf, standing nearby, wore a mischievous grin. It was clear he'd pulled this trick before. I often use this little trick to get them to fight among themselves, weakening their forces without them even realizing it. A clever maneuver. Thank you. Just as Gandalf was selecting his next target, preparing to instigate more infighting, Levi stood up. Gandalf paused and looked up at him. That's way too much work. I think it'll be faster just to hit them head-on. Swish, Levi drew his long sword, its blade glowing with a blue light. Enemies. Roar, with a warning cry, the orcs leaped onto their wargs, while the rest grabbed their weapons and followed. Oh, dear. Impulsive as ever. Gandalf sighed. Knowing there was no point in hiding anymore, he stood up and grabbed his staff. Aha, look what we found, a human with a shiny sword, and a wizard. Who gave you the nerve to come into my territory? Kill them. The mini-boss raised his cleaver, and the wargs lunged forward. Boom. Levi slashed his sword in a wide arc, stopping 3 riders in their tracks. The wargs' fur burst into flames, and the orcs riding them screamed as they were engulfed. They tumbled off the burning beasts. Gandalf glanced at the fire. The flames, which had almost been extinguished by the rolling wargs, flared up again, quickly spreading to nearby orcs. Levi didn't bother looking back. He knew Gandalf wielded a ring of fire, capable of igniting both flames and hope. Levi, clad in his black armor, waded into the throng of orcs, cutting them down left and right and leaving a trail of charred corpses. The remaining orcs began to tremble. If I can't take them, I'll just run. By comparison, the old man over there looked like an easier target. One orc screeched, raised his weapon, and charged at Gandalf. But Gandalf remained calm. He raised his staff and poked the orc. Relying on the principle that longer reach is better, he used the length of his staff to knock the attacking orc to the ground. Then, he spun around and whacked another orc with the staff. The staff whistled through the air and struck another orc. This time, the orc's flimsy armor buckled inward. Gandalf himself was surprised. This thing is getting easier to use every day. Although Gandalf was fighting with considerable gusto, he was no match for Levi. 5 or 6 orcs surrounded him, intending to take him hostage. Gandalf slammed his staff into the ground, and a blinding flash swept across the camp. The air smelled of gunpowder, and several orcs dropped to the ground, dead. Chapter 44 Separate Actions. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Levi, hold up. Levi had just taken down dozens of orcs and over a dozen wargs. leaving only their leader standing. Gandalf rushed over, eyeing the last survivor. I thought you'd forgotten what we're here for. Relax, I've got my sword under control. Levi sheathed his sword while Gandalf pinned the orc leader against the chest with his staff, preventing any last-ditch attacks. Their purpose, of course, was to extract information from these orcs. Alright, dirtbag, what are you doing here? Heh, damn wizard, we'll flay you alive sooner or later. Boom! Gandalf struck him hard, leaving the orc a bloody mess. Tell me what you're up to, and I'll make your death quick. We're going to kill all the humans in this area, and everything will be ours. Ga. With that, the small leader breathed his last. Levi looked at Gandalf. Are there still people living around here? Gandalf nodded slowly, frowning. As far as I know, yeah. Years ago, before evil took hold and Rovanian became a ruin, when Mirkwood was still the great greenwood, this fertile river valley was home to many free folk. But now the forest is corrupted, pitch black, and riddled with dangers. It's no longer safe. Most people have moved on to safer lands. There were a lot of people here, both humans and hobbits. Some left, some are still wandering, and some are trapped, still huddled together in this area. We have to do something, Levi. Gandalf tapped the little leader with his staff to make sure he wasn't faking, then beckoned Levi to get moving. Where are we headed? Not me, we need to warn any settlements nearby, tell them to get out before the orcs get to them. Whoa, Gandalf, I think that's a job just for you. Levi stood his ground. Gandalf turned around. What about you? I'll kill all the orcs. Wouldn't that solve the problem? Levi figured there were just too many orcs running around. Gandalf paused, considering, if anyone else had said that, the wizard would have cracked them over the head with his pipe to knock some sense into them. If the orcs were planning a large-scale raid, they wouldn't just send a few scattered teams, there would be thousands of them. One person facing thousands of orcs was a suicide mission, plain and simple, usually, but if it was Levi, and if those orcs weren't all bunched together all the time, maybe. Gandalf nodded. That's a point. Alright, we'll split up here. But be careful. I'll come reinforce you as soon as I'm done here. May your mission go well. You too. They were in the Anduin Valley, east of the Misty Mountains. They parted ways and headed in opposite directions. Levi pulled up his system map, and the area was covered in unexplored fog. Perfect. Time to map this place out. Boom. Night fell. An orc, torch in hand, kicked down a fence, setting fire to the wooden houses lining the road. The firelight revealed a face covered in hideous lumps. Bad luck. Another abandoned village. Where's the scout? Get him over here. Didn't they say there were people here? A smaller orc scurried over, bowing low. I did see a fire here earlier. Maybe they're hiding. Just then, another orc arrived with a report. He'd found something at the village entrance. The little leader led the way. The ashes are still warm. There must be someone close by. Find them. The orcs were about to scatter and search when the wargs suddenly howled a warning, snarling at the shadows. The little leader squinted and saw a human in a plain linen robe slowly stepping out of the darkness. Aha! Found one. The warg surged forward eagerly, and the orc raised his cleaver, already imagining how he'd kill this unlucky human, but then a faint blue light flashed, and the human smiled faintly. Wait, something was wrong. The little leader stopped the wargs and backed away. A moment later, looking at the burning corpses of orcs and wargs, and the direction the little orc leader had fled, Levi was a bit disappointed. He wasn't on horseback this time, and he couldn't outrun a warg. Smart move. He knew to run when he saw me. Ignoring the fleeing orc, Levi resumed his patrol, slowly mapping out the area, searching for abandoned villages or stray orc war parties. Under his carpet-style search, one quiet or noisy day blurred into the next. Chief, we saw fireworks in the village over there. Should we check it out? Hearing that there might be people in the village, the surrounding wargs and orcs became agitated, eager to move. At the rear of the column, someone sighed. his eyes glazed over, were more people about to be enslaved. Despite Gandalf's warning and Levi's efforts, many people were still being captured by the orcs during the large-scale looting, either as food or slaves. This was an orc war party responsible for escorting the looted human slaves. Compared to other raiding teams, they were larger, stronger, and far more vicious. Though confident in his own abilities, the leader was wary. After hearing the scout's report, he asked, "Fireworks? Just one, or lots?" "Lots, more than one house." "Old houses or new?" "Any signs of recent activity?" That the scout scratched his swollen head, trying to recall. "Some houses are old, but someone seems to have cleaned them up. I saw some clothes drying in the yard." "Lots of weeds along the road?" That the scout shook his head. "No, very few weeds. You can see right inside." "Good," that the leader grinned cruelly. It wasn't a trap. It was a real village. He pointed to a squad of only dozens of orcs, ordering, "You guard the slaves here. The rest of you, with me. We feast on human flesh tonight." "Ha ha ha," that the pack of orcs charged toward the village, but after kicking down doors and searching through the houses, they were dumbfounded. "Where is everyone?" That an orc stared at the bonfires burning in some chimneys and the clothes hanging on the wooden racks in the yard, confused. Suddenly, there was a commotion from the slave-guarding team in the distance. Orcs and wargs, engulfed in flames, flew into the sky and crashed to the ground, screaming. Under the night sky, the scene was impossible to miss. Chapter 45 Guidance. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. It had to be him. That guy. Damn it, fell for that again. That the little boss was livid. He raised his machete, yelling towards Li Wei. The wargs and orcs behind him looked ready to tear someone apart, waiting for the order to charge and chop the human to bits. "Let's get out of here." That the boss spun around, ready to bolt, but the orcs were dumbfounded. When they finally reacted, their eyes blazed with resentment. Running from one human? There were hundreds of them. "You don't deserve to lead us, you coward." That a beefy orc stepped forward to object. "Shut your trap, scum. You wanna die? I can make that happen." That the little boss grabbed the dissenting orc and hoisted him up, squeezing his neck so tight he couldn't breathe or break free. He struggled, going pale as he choked. Thump, star. Finally, the leader relented, dropping the orc, who gasped for air. Seeing that, the other orcs shut up quick. At least, they stopped complaining out loud. "You have no idea how tough he is. Go get back up. We need more muscle to deal with him." Grumbling, the mob of orcs started their retreat. Meanwhile, the firelight danced on the refugees' worn faces, staring at the black-armored warrior who'd seemed to drop from the sky. They couldn't tell if they were awake or dreaming. More importantly, they couldn't figure out if this brutal-looking guy was friend or foe. Only a few dozen poorly equipped orcs had been left to guard the refugees. Li Wei cleaned them up fast. Dead or fled, not one left. "Sir." An old farmer shuffled forward, addressing Li Wei with nervous courage. Doing his best to act respectful, he gave a little bow. Just like the fancy folks, Li Wei removed his helmet and gently helped the old man stand up straight. Seeing that the warrior seemed friendly, the refugees all breathed a collective sigh of relief. "You live around here?" "Yes, sir. Our families have been here for generations," the old man replied. Li Wei nudged an orc corpse with his boot. "Doesn't seem like a great place to settle down for the long haul." The old man didn't know what to say. He barely understood what had happened. They'd been living here fine, then suddenly their village was attacked by orcs. Some were killed, some eaten alive, and the rest were herded here. "Don't stay here," Li Wei said, shaking his head. "It's gonna get dangerous, real fast." "But sir, our homes are gone, we have nothing, and nowhere to go. Everything we have is here." Li Wei looked at the refugees, his face thoughtful. "Head south. Follow the river. It'll take you straight to Rohan. South of Rohan is Gondor. They're human kingdoms. They can protect you. If you don't want to go south, head east, all the way past the Black Forest, to the River Valley State. You can find a place to live there. He paused, then added, if you're really desperate, you can try going west, over the mountains, through the wilderness. There's territory there. We understand, my lord. The refugees didn't ask many questions. They thanked Li Wei solemnly and started planning their long journey, but seeing them so destitute, Li Wei shook his head and stopped them. Take these. It'll make the trip easier. Li Wei handed out a pile of bread. He also quickly forged some iron swords and gave them to the younger refugees who looked like they could handle a fight. He wasn't sure how much good it would do, but at least they wouldn't starve on the road and they'd have a fighting chance if they ran into trouble. The supplies were a drop in the bucket for Li Wei, but a treasure for the refugees. As the refugees left, a notification popped up in his reputation system. As these refugees found new homes, Levi's reputation would spread among the relevant camps and regions. The more people he saved, the more respect he'd earn. A nice little bonus, he mused. Elsewhere, where the raiders hadn't yet arrived, a gray figure was arguing with a group of people. But we've always lived here. We've never heard of any orc army. That's because the dwarves drove them out a long time ago. But they're back, and they're close. If you don't want to lose your lives, gather everyone in the village, pack your belongings, and leave now. You still have time. Just when the villagers seemed about to listen, a scruffy man pushed his way forward, sneering, no way. We're not leaving. You're just a wizard spreading rumors. It's a trick to get us to leave. I bet you've had your eye on our village for a while, just waiting to kick us out. Bang, star. Gandalf frowned and whacked the complainer with his staff, knocking him to the ground. I'm telling you again, leave now, or it'll be too late. Gandalf spoke loud, his words seeming to carry some kind of magic, and the villagers unconsciously felt a sense of conviction. But this land is how we survive. If we leave, where are we supposed to go? Someone still asked the question. There are plenty of places where people can live, more than here. Gandalf looked at the villagers and pointed. To the north, there are larger settlements not far from the river, where more people live. Your ancestors are of the same stock. If you band together, you'll be stronger. Gandalf clearly knew more about the area's history than Levi. He knew of human settlements north of the valley, not as far as Rohan or Dale. They had weapons and could defend themselves against some enemies, though there weren't many free people in the area. If they united, they could form a strong resistance and fight off the orc invasion. That way, they wouldn't have to rely on others or wander aimlessly, but could stay in the region and stand on their own 2 feet. Soon, the villagers were gathering their things and discussing which way to go. Gandalf lit his pipe and took a puff. He wasn't just lighting his pipe, of course. He was also igniting a spark of hope, to find, to guide, to unite. That was the wizard's purpose. Chapter 46 Winter. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Ugh. Out in the swamp, Levi stretched out, finding another small stronghold. He patted the tattered linen cloak, stained with blood, as his sword sliced through the oak's throat at his feet. The blue glow above faded. Boom, star. The fire that erupted on the corpse chased away some of the morning fog. Levi held out his hand to warm it, enjoying the heat. It's getting colder. It's been a while since he split up with Gandalf. At first, Levi kept track of the sunrise and sunset, what time it was, how many days had passed, but as the fog on his mental map cleared, as he covered more ground, and as the sword in his hand cut down more and more orcs, Levi started to feel numb. Each day was the same, either rushing to uncover more map, or hunting for oaks and refugees. Day in, day out, nothing changed. He vaguely remembered running into some scattered refugees a month ago, talking to them briefly, and pointing them towards safety, but maybe all the residents of this area had finally evacuated, or maybe it was something else, but Levi hadn't seen another soul in a long time. Not even animals were around. It seemed the only things moving and making noise besides the orcs were wargs, though, of course, they weren't moving now. After sitting and spacing out for a bit, Levi pulled out 2 hunks of bread and ate them. Then, he opened his map and studied the area's layout. Now, most of the fog in the region known as the Anduin Valley had lifted, and the terrain was mapped out. There were orc encampments scattered around, and Levi had wiped out all the ones he could. The rest had either run off too fast, or were hunkered down in large groups of hundreds. Levi couldn't take on an army that size, not yet. When there were that many, they had too many tactical options, and getting trapped was easy. Levi shook his head. The remaining orc forces were a tough nut to crack, dug in deep. Time to take a break. After being out this long, even Levi was starting to have trouble finding supplies. He'd eaten all the prepared food a while ago. For a long time, Levi had been relying on the few clumps of dried grass he'd stashed in his pack to make bread, and now, the bread was almost gone. Levi stood up, about to wander around and see if he could find any game, when a familiar voice called out from the distance. "Finally found you, Levi." Phew, that wasn't easy. He saw the old man in the gray robe hurrying toward him across the grass, carefully avoiding the swamp. "I've been looking for you for nearly 2 weeks. If I hadn't seen some burned orc and warg corpses, I'd have thought you'd gone home. The oaks in this area aren't all gone yet. I couldn't go back so soon." Levi shook his head. "Whoa," Gandalf said, catching his breath. "Levi, come on, that's enough. You've done more than enough. I've been here for 2 weeks, and I haven't seen half a live oak. To be honest, it's cleaner than if the dwarves had been here. Do you have some kind of personal vendetta against these oaks?" "A vendetta?" Levi glanced at his reputation stat. Misty Mountain Orcs, -1523, archenemy. "I guess you could say that." At this point, Levi figured the oaks in this region hated him just as much as the dwarven royal family did. If Levi and Thorin were being chased by oaks and ran in opposite directions, the oaks would probably go after Levi first, assuming they thought they could win. "Well, whatever the reason, our goal has been achieved. The humans in the valley have moved north and banded together. When they truly unite, the orc invasions won't threaten them anymore. Maybe they can form a new community. They'd have run into more trouble without your help." As Gandalf spoke, he found a chunk of fallen wood, sat down, pulled out his pipe, and lit it. He blew a smoke ring into the air, the wizard's tense face relaxing. Gandalf smoked in silence, and Levi just stood there, almost in a daze. Silence hung over the swamp, broken only by the thin trail of smoke drifting upward. Gandalf glanced at the silent Levi, looking thoughtful. After a while, maybe because it was time for a break, he put away his pipe and clapped his knee. "Oh, man, I almost forgot." "What?" "New Year's." "New Year's?" Levi looked confused. "What's so important about New Year's?" "Yeah, it's almost New Year's. I promised the kids in the Shire I'd bring fireworks for the celebration." "Has it been that long?" Levi felt a bit disoriented. This trip was definitely his longest ever, even longer than that time in Hell. "It's time for us to wrap things up, Levi." Gandalf clapped Levi on the shoulder, marking the end of the adventure. A cool breeze swept through, small white flakes drifted onto Levi's face, icy cold and damp. It was snowing. "The orcs have temporarily stopped their advance. For some reason, they've pulled back to the mountains and aren't pushing outwards anymore." As they walked, Gandalf shared the information he'd gathered. When he said some reason, he glanced at Levi. "Honestly, this is one of the few times I've felt things have gone smoothly. Every other adventure has been a struggle. There's only so much one person can do. Not everyone can be as strong as Levi." "Levi?" Gandalf suddenly called out. "Yeah, I'm here. I feel like you're out of it." "Nah, I just feel a little, a little tired." "Nah, I don't get tired." "I think you are." Gandalf looked wise and said slowly, "Levi, the elves have endless lifespans, a natural connection to nature and magic, they're strong, and they never get sick or old. But they can die of sadness. Spirit is the best food for life and the soul. You need to keep that in mind, Levi. Whether it's you, me, or anyone else, we all need to rest. I never stay awake when it's time to sleep. For you and me, the body's never been the issue. It's the soul that needs constant maintenance." He couldn't have said it any more clearly. and there was nothing else to say. Levi listened quietly and nodded. Really? Come to think of it, he hadn't slept in months, because he didn't feel tired, his body didn't feel worn out. Maybe Gandalf was right. Maybe the soul needed maintenance from time to time, since it couldn't be repaired with experience points. Before he knew it, several days had passed, and the two of them retraced their steps and left the Misty Mountains. The journey was surprisingly quiet, with hardly any orc activity. Even when they went through the pass, there were no orcs to harass them. As they reached the wilderness below the mountains, Gandalf asked again. Like I said before, I'm thinking of heading to the Shire for a bit. What about you, Levi? Me? Levi gently held out his hand and caught a snowflake. I'm not going. I've got some things to take care of. Even though it's winter. Chapter 47, Bree's Encounter. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Snow, you only see it high up in the Misty Mountains or way up north. Otherwise, you're waiting for winter. Levi never found snow particularly useful, so he didn't pay it much mind. Ice, though, that's another story. Especially the blue ice that doesn't melt. That's essential for building super-fast roads, so, during his first winter here, Levi decided to stock up. One day, after a long trip, Levi shoveled the snow from his city gate and invited Gandalf over for a bite. The old wizard took off in a flash, no lingering. Thanks for the invite, but if I don't leave now, I'll be late. Wouldn't want the kids calling me a liar. Alright, happy holidays. After seeing Gandalf off, Levi tackled the snowy areas around his place. Beautiful, sure, but it was really getting in the way. That first round of clearing filled a whole crate with snow. Even after months away, the animals were doing fine. The heavy snow didn't seem to bother them. They were tough. His original livestock, cows, sheep, horses, were living the high life in a heated shed with plenty of food and water. The farm, on the other hand, looked rough. The cold had frozen the water sources, turning the arable land dry and causing the crops to just drop their seeds. Levi put some glowstone at the bottom of the water source to warm it up and stop it from freezing, then replanted everything. A little snow ain't gonna stop my tough crops. After dealing with the snow's effects, night fell. Looking at the dark sky, Levi remembered what Gandalf had said, so, for once, Levi decided to sleep somewhere other than his room. Ah, that's the stuff. Levi woke up feeling amazing. It was more than just energy, it was like his whole system had been rebooted, not just full-belly energized, but refreshed. Alright, let's get to work. He grabbed a bunch of materials from the warehouse and started planning out a huge ice farm. It takes 9 regular ice blocks to make one of the unmeltable kind, and 9 of those to make the blue ice you need for those fast roads. Building a road was going to take a mountain of ice. This was a long-term project. Levi grabbed his pickaxe, enchanted for precise collection and self-repair, and started chipping away, day and night, of course. It took time for the water to freeze into ice again. So, instead of just standing around, Levi used that time to work on other things around the territory. After that first round of shoveling, he was dreading the thought of doing it again. But the weather didn't care about his feelings. If it snowed again, the whole place would be buried. Luckily, he had ways to handle it, like torches and glowstone. These heat sources could melt the snow as it fell, saving him a ton of work. So, along the main roads and frequently traveled paths, Levi set up these cool-looking, warm streetlights using glowstone and torches, and with streetlights, you needed roads. So, Levi gathered more materials and built roads along the line of lights. Roads and streetlights alone felt kind of bland, though. So he added decorations, artificial trees, little flower beds, steps and benches, fences, ponds, and even some small streams with little wooden bridges. As he built, Levi started thinking about the valley's scenery and architecture, and it all just flowed together. The roadside castle was constantly evolving. Meanwhile, Gandalf had just finished a massive fireworks show in the Shire, surrounded by cheering kids. He was smiling so hard his eyes were practically closed. Okay, just one more, folks, the last one. Boom. The fireworks lit up the night sky, and the hobbits in the village cheered. It was a perfect night. Gandalf set off fireworks to his heart's content, and the kids were so excited they couldn't sleep, replaying it all in their heads. Maybe they even dreamed of fireworks. Gandalf, will you be back next year? The next morning, the kids swarmed Gandalf as he was leaving. Well, can't say for sure, but I promise this isn't the last time you'll see me. Oh, gotta run. Goodbye, kids. Gandalf waved and headed off. Got a hunch this way's the best. Gandalf was on the road again, heading who knows where. People went back to their lives, same as always. Nothing happened. The days went by, lightning flashed, boom, a heavy rain announced the arrival of spring. March 15, 2941 of the Third Age, Bree, at the Prancing Pony Inn. Gandalf turned his head and saw a dwarf. He looked a little down on his luck, but there was something special about him. His face looked familiar. Thorin, son of Thrain. The moment he saw the dwarf, Gandalf remembered the dwarf prisoner he'd met in Dol Guldur almost a century ago. The guy had been tortured so badly he was barely recognizable and his memory was shot. That dwarf had given Gandalf a key and a map, asking him to give them to his son, but all this time, Gandalf never knew who that dwarf was, or who his son was. Seeing Thorin, it all clicked. The dwarf who gave him the key and the map was Thrain II, king of Durin's dwarves. And the dwarf in front of him was Thorin Oakenshield, who had inherited that title. Everything suddenly made sense. The impoverished dwarf heir was focused on his food, but in the crowded inn, several pairs of shifty eyes were locked on him. Two thugs who'd been waiting for their chance got up and flanked him. Spies, paid off by the enemy. Thorin slowly put down his food, one hand already on his sword. Mind if I join you? A voice that brought a strange sense of comfort broke the tension. Thorin looked up and saw an old man in a grey robe sitting down across from him. Seeing the situation change, the thugs looked at each other and decided to back off for now. Let me introduce myself. I'm Gandalf, Gandalf the Grey. I know who you are. Thorin had clearly heard of the strange old wizard. Oh, fantastic. What a coincidence. So, Thorin Oakenshield, what brings you to Bree? I heard someone saw my father wandering in the wild near Dunland. I went to look for him, but found nothing. Thrain. Gandalf sighed. The gears of fate were turning once again. Chapter 48 Expedition Invitation. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. This meeting wasn't by chance, was it, Gandalf? Not a coincidence at all. Gandalf spoke slowly. The situation at the Lonely Mountain has been weighing on my mind, Thorin. That dragon's been holed up there too long. It's only a matter of time before it attracts more trouble. The Lonely Mountain is a crucial line of defense. If it falls into the wrong hands, they could sweep north all the way to Angmar. We could even see the Witch Kingdom of Angmar rise again. Evil forces would then pour through that route, bypass the southern defenses, and threaten the peaceful lands west of the Misty Mountains. Even places like Lindon and the Shire, which have always been remote, would be in danger. Gondor and Rohan would be attacked from every side. It's like a house of cards. If one falls, they all fall. I ran into some thugs on the Green Road who mistook me for a bum. I doubt things will end well for them. Thorin knew what some wizards were capable of. Gandalf nodded and produced a piece of tough parchment. I found this on them. It's a bounty. A bounty for what? Your head. Someone wants you dead. We can't wait any longer, Thorin. You're the heir to the King of Durin's line. If you can unite the dwarf armies, you'll have the strength to take back Erebor. Call a meeting of the 7 dwarf clans. Remind them of their oath. Thorin paused. In theory, summoning the dwarf army could lead to reclaiming the Lonely Mountain, but the 7 dwarf armies swore allegiance to whoever holds the king's jewel. The king's jewel is the Arkenstone, that magnificent diamond, the heart of the mountain. But Smaug guards that treasure. Only with the Arkenstone can I rally them. Have you forgotten that Smaug stole the Arkenstone a long time ago? Gandalf stared at the 2 rough-looking men beside them until they left, then said. What if I could help you get it back? How? It's under a dragon's claws. Exactly. Then we need a burglar. Gandalf was starting to think this operation required a hobbit, and for good reason. They're small, quiet, and blend in easily. Natural hiders, making them ideal burglar material. Having settled on a candidate in his mind, the wizard lit his pipe. thought for a moment, and added, and a brave warrior might want to come along. That guy would be interested in this. Gandalf had a feeling, the plan was beginning to take shape. Thorin, back from a long journey in Dunland, and Gandalf, who had just finished a long journey, continued traveling together, heading to the Blue Mountains to discuss details and recruit members for the expedition. In April, after all the discussions were completed, Gandalf left first. I'm going to find a friend first. We'll meet in the Shire. I'll leave a sign on the door. Gandalf left, followed by Thorin and the 12 dwarves who had answered the call, all fully armed, embarking on the same journey. April, 2941 of the Third Age, near the roadside fort, Gandalf stood on a high point, leaning on his staff, looking out at the large, still territory in the distance. Frowning, he lit his pipe as he observed. Where am I? Is this still the roadside fort? This roadside didn't look like a roadside at all, even without entering the territory. The greenery spilling from the city walls and corners caught Gandalf's attention. Suddenly, he spotted a man on the city wall waving at him. Gandalf raised his staff and waved back twice. On the city wall, Levi walked to the entrance, pulled the lever to open the iron gate, and waited for the wizard's arrival. Ha! How are you doing these days, Levi? Gandalf greeted him as he approached. Not bad. Time's been flying by. Levi wore nether alloy boots with fall protection enchantment on his feet, but the rest of his body was clad in casual clothes. He looked like a regular townie. He was, except for a phantom pain in his liver. Oh, my God, this is incredible. As he approached the gate, Gandalf was captivated by the scenery inside. He peered around Levi, astonished. Is this still the great wilderness of Eriador? I could have sworn I was in Rivendell. Thanks, I've been building up the place a bit lately. A bit? Gandalf raised his eyebrows. You have a way with words. Of course, he couldn't let a friend stand outside. Levi welcomed Gandalf into the castle. After a short rest, he cooked some dishes. The two ate and talked at the table. Honestly, if I didn't know you, I'd think this was the new elven home. I may have borrowed a few ideas from the valley. So, that's what you've been busy with these past few months. Levi nodded. Through constant construction and planning, the territory had become like a proper city, not just a few buildings on some empty land. Gandalf looked at the intricate scenery outside the window and remarked. Everything's great here, but it's too quiet. No one around but you. Also, maybe smooth out the corners of some buildings. They look nice, but they're a bit sharp. Someone might run into them. And that big pool over there, don't take this the wrong way, but it doesn't fit in with the surroundings. Good points. That's actually an ice field. I use it to harvest ice in the winter. Spring came too fast, so I haven't had time to take it down yet. Ice harvesting, is that how you harvest ice? Gandalf was confused, but then remembered who he was talking to, and relaxed. The meal wasn't rushed, and the two chatted. Gandalf talked about his experiences north of the Shire, the Green Road thugs, and the wandering vagrants. Vagrants, Levi muttered. Do you know a vagrant named Farad'n? Haven't seen him since we parted ways. No. Gandalf shook his head. He knew a lot of people, but not everyone in Middle-earth. I can ask around though. I'll let you know if I hear anything. Oh, don't worry about it. Just asked because you mentioned vagrants. With his skills, I doubt he'll get into trouble. I hope so. Gandalf finished the last piece of meat on his plate, put down his utensils, and said. Actually, the real reason I'm here is to see if you're interested in joining an expedition. Expedition? Levi perked up. Right, it's about that time. I know wizards don't visit without a purpose. Tell me more about this expedition. Chapter 49 Banquet. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The expedition, of course, meant the one to the Lonely Mountain. Gandalf wasted no time telling Levi about his run-in with Thorin and Bree and his concerns regarding their plans for the Lonely Mountain. He laid it all out, trusting Levi completely. Thorin Oakenshield, son of Thrain and heir to the throne of Durin's dwarves, has gathered a dwarf company in the Blue Mountains. We're meeting at the Snitch, then heading to the Lonely Mountain together to reclaim the Arkenstone. With the Arkenstone in hand, Thorin can rally the dwarf armies, launch a full-scale assault on the dragon, and take back Erebor. Sounds like a plan, Levi remarked, keeping it simple. It was, on paper at least. But as history would show, the Lonely Mountain expedition had a few kinks to work out. Gandalf nodded, continuing, the treasures amassed by the dragon in Erebor are legendary, piled higher than mountains. If you're willing to join the expedition and help the dwarves reclaim their home, you'll get 1/15 of the treasure as your share. Gandalf had observed that, despite Levi's occasional eccentricities, he was willing to fight for the underdog and stand against evil, but he wasn't without needs. He had his own lands and, likely, would have many people relying on him soon, so, a reward was necessary. As for Gandalf himself, he wasn't in it for the treasure. Stopping evil was reward enough. I'm in. Hearing those words, Gandalf visibly relaxed, a weight lifting off his shoulders. With Levi's considerable fighting prowess on board, the expedition had a much better chance. Good, it's settled. Gandalf immediately finalized the details, eager to avoid any second thoughts from Levi. We'll meet on the evening of April 25th at Bag End in Hobbiton, the Shire. Don't worry about finding it, I'll mark the door. There will be a feast. Okay, I'll be there. Seeing Gandalf's "it's all been arranged" expression, Levi couldn't help but feel a little sorry for Bilbo, but he also found himself grinning. His honest, respectable hobbit friend was in for a rude awakening in a couple of days. Levi's barely perceptible smirk did give Gandalf pause for a moment, but he quickly dismissed it and headed straight for the Shire. Hobbits, plenty of them in the Shire, but that adventurous little took from the Baggins family had always struck a chord with Gandalf. Even though he couldn't exactly call him little anymore, he was the one. While Gandalf was off, Levi packed his backpack, stowed away any loose building supplies in the warehouse to free up space, and gathered a whole bunch of supplies and medicines, golden apples, various emergency potions, lembas bread, several sets of food and hay blocks enough to last a good while, armor, weapons, tools, arrows, plus all the usual necessities and emergency items. Soon, there wasn't much room left in the backpack. After stocking up and seeing to the territory, Levi waited a couple of days before setting off on horseback. Mostly, he was afraid his horse would run too fast, and it would be embarrassing to arrive ahead of Gandalf. A few days passed in a flash. A bright morning, the Shire, Hobbiton. Good morning. Bilbo puffed on his pipe and greeted the strange old man standing at his gate. What do you mean? The old man asked, eyeing the hobbit. Do you wish me a good morning, or are you stating that it is a good morning whether I like it or not? Or perhaps you simply feel especially good this morning? Or is it just a statement of fact that it is nice to have such a morning? Probably all of those things, Bilbo replied, feeling increasingly uneasy about this strange old man, suddenly showing up at his door to disturb his peaceful morning, and then playing these word games. I hope he's okay, Bilbo thought. I'm looking for someone to join an adventure. Adventure? Bilbo blinked twice. Was this something Levi had mentioned? Oh, that's kind of interesting. This old guy is an adventurer, but it's definitely not for me. I don't think you'll find any adventure lovers this side of Bree. You've come to the wrong place. I do have a friend who's a good cook and likes adventure, but it's definitely not me. I can ask him about it the next time I see him. Anyway. Good morning, Bilbo said again, planning to head back inside to avoid the weird old man, until Gandalf started reminiscing. You know me, but you might not remember my name. I'm Gandalf, Bilbo Baggins. You've changed. You weren't like this when you were a child. Right, okay. Gandalf nodded, not caring whether Bilbo agreed or not. He'd already decided for Bilbo. Clang. After a brief tug-of-war, Gandalf found himself locked out. Bilbo bolted the door to keep the strange old man from bothering him. Ziz. Bilbo heard some strange noises. He couldn't see it, but Gandalf's staff had turned into a laser pointer and was etching a symbol that looked like the letter F on the door. Bilbo's peace lasted only one day. That night, Bilbo had just fried a fish and was about to dig in when there was a knock at the door. "Dwalin, at your service." "Ah, well, Bilbo Baggins, at your service." Bilbo quickly tidied himself up and returned the greeting. Dwalin promptly made himself at home, helping himself to the dinner Bilbo had prepared. "Well, mostly, I wasn't expecting anyone today." Jingle bell. That must be the doorbell. "Balin, at your service." "That a while later." "Philly, Keely, at your service." "You must be Mr. Baggins." "No, you're going the wrong way." Bilbo realized something was amiss. "That's my mother's dowry box, please don't do that." That the box didn't escape the fate of being rubbed by dirty shoes. "Mr. Baggins, I must say you have excellent taste. This sword was made by our people. It's finely crafted and worth a fortune." Swish, the sword was drawn and swung a couple of times, making Bilbo shrink back in fright. "Hey! Don't do that. That was given to me by Levi, please put it back." "Levi? Sounds familiar." Jingle bell, the conversation was interrupted by the doorbell. Bilbo opened the door, clearly annoyed, then he was shocked speechless by the large group of dwarves that piled in. Looking up, he saw an old man peering into the room. Gandalf. A lively party erupted in Bag End. Seeing the food in his pantry vanish bit by bit, Bilbo started to feel lightheaded with anger, and then the dwarves made up a song on the spot to make fun of him, which only added to his misery. "There's still one person who isn't here, our leader." A dwarf suddenly remembered. "No, two, and he isn't here either," Gandalf corrected, looking out the window. "Will he even come?" The merry feast continued until the doorbell rang again. Thorin. "Gandalf, you said this place was easy to find." Dwarves, hobbits, wizards, soon a crowd was gathered around the table and began to discuss the expedition. Even though they wanted to wait for Levi, the atmosphere had built, and Gandalf felt he had to start the discussion. Finally, the doorbell rang again. Jingle bell. Everyone looked at the door, then at Bilbo, motioning for him to open it. Gandalf breathed a quiet sigh of relief. "Oh, well, I hope it's not some weirdo this time." Crunch, a figure wearing black armor and a worn linen cloak stained with some creature's blood, carrying a faint scent of iron, stepped slowly through the door. The moment he walked in, the light in the room seemed to dim, as though absorbed by the armor. "This person is dangerous." Whoa! Some of the dwarves grabbed stools, some reached for their weapons, and others, finding nothing better, grabbed forks from the nearby drawer. Still others took a step forward and reached out to pull Bilbo back. In an instant, everyone was ready for a fight. Bilbo, however, looked surprised. "Levi," that he opened his arms, a smile spreading across his face for the first time tonight. "Oh, this is great. Welcome, I wasn't expecting you to show up. As you can see." Bilbo turned to introduce the dwarves and Gandalf but stopped, startled by what he saw. "What are you doing?" Chapter 50 Join. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Okay, weapons down. Dwalin, this is our partner, Bomber. Forks and spoons aren't swords and shields. Bofer, put the recorder away. That thing's gonna damage his armor. No threat. Gandalf calmed everyone down, coaxing them like children to get the dwarves to stand down. "Is this the powerful companion you mentioned, Gandalf?" Thorin was the calmest one there. This dwarf, with his kingly presence, hadn't moved much at all. He just stared at Levi, his eyes never leaving him for a second. The smell was familiar, orc blood. "Indeed, he'll be a great help on our journey. I guarantee it." After greeting Bilbo, Levi turned to Thorin, who was still staring. "Hello. We've met before, haven't we?" Thorin searched his memory, trying to place him. "Yes, I traveled to the Blue Mountains a while back. We met in the workshop in the hall." "Hey, aren't you the human who stayed at the inn a few months ago?" one of the dwarves asked. Levi nodded and smiled, greeting several dwarves. Suddenly, another dwarf spoke up. "Didn't I hear that a few months ago, a human traveler outdrank the best drinker in the area?" Seriously, that the dwarves were skeptical. A human out drinking a dwarf? You're kidding. You. But it's true. A lot of people saw it. Someone said something, and the dwarves went silent. I won't believe it, till I see him drink with me, that the dwarves started to jeer. Alright, this isn't the time for that. Seeing things about to get out of hand, Gandalf quickly intervened. You've got a strong smell of blood on you, Levi. Run into trouble on the road? Levi nodded. Not exactly trouble, but I did run into some wargs and some orcs who weren't too bright. Strange. They actually attacked you? Gandalf raised an eyebrow. What are those beasts afraid of? One of the dwarves asked, not understanding. The Valles of Anduin were too far from the Blue Mountains, and the word hadn't spread yet. But Levi's exploits would eventually reach all of Middle-earth, becoming something of a legend. I thought it was weird too. This group was different from any I'd seen before. They were well equipped, and seemed to have a strong leader, which made them a lot bolder. But I still wiped them out. Their wargs were fast, but my horse is faster. Gandalf nodded, not surprised by Levi's casual remark. The dwarves exchanged glances and whispered. Some thought this warrior was just a big talker. Bilbo was lost, not knowing what Levi was talking about. Orcs, wargs. They were all new words to him, but he got the gist of the conversation. Oh, so you two know each other, Gandalf and Levi. Okay, figures. Bilbo blinked, taking a deep breath. He'd have to find a way to warn Levi to be careful who he made friends with. After the brief interruption, Bilbo found a stool for Levi so he could sit at the table and join the meeting. Now the table was full. Levi had a seat, but Bilbo could only stand on tiptoe behind Thorin, looking at the table. We need to seize the opportunity to reclaim Erebor, Thorin declared, after analyzing the situation. But there's no way into the mountain. Balin was the wisest of the dwarves. That's not entirely true, my dear Balin. Gandalf bent down, pulled a key and a map from his robe, and said to Thorin. Your father, Thrain, gave me these for safekeeping. Now, they're yours. Thorin took the key, clutching it tightly. If there's a key, there's a door. Another way in. That the dwarves saw a glimmer of hope. Even getting into the mountain is dangerous, let alone finding gems. Gandalf said slowly. But with caution and cunning, it's possible. So we need a burglar. Point one of the dwarves said. Everyone looked at Bilbo, but Bilbo had never stolen anything in his life, and didn't like the idea. The dwarves began to question him, then started to argue. Enough. I said Bilbo Baggins is a burglar, and that's that. Gandalf stood up, radiating power. The dwarves felt like they were choking, and no one dared to argue. Levi and Thorin were the only ones unaffected. Thorin was a king among dwarves, and naturally wouldn't be intimidated. As for Levi, he thought the special effects were pretty cool. Give him the contract. Bilbo began to read the long contract. 1/15, well, that's fair. Poof. After reading the contract and being deliberately scared by a few dwarves, the comfort-loving hobbit fainted and fell to the ground. So dramatic. Later. Bilbo, I can't guarantee you'll come back. But if you do, things will never be the same. Gandalf was giving Bilbo some pep talk in the living room. Bilbo thought about Gandalf's words, and about the wonderful stories Levi would tell, and hesitated. No, I still can't sign it. Bilbo refused. Outside, the dwarves were talking. That Levi seems reliable, but the burglar. Some shook their heads. Everything's going wrong. The truth is, we're not exactly strong warriors. We're just a bunch of toy makers and tinkerers. Thorin overheard this, and didn't agree. He gave a speech to encourage everyone. Every single one of these dwarves is stronger than the army of Iron Hills. Because they answered my call. Their loyalty and courage are enough. Gandalf listened to the dwarves and looked at Levi again. You can fight that dragon, right? He asked quietly. Levi glanced at him. I don't know. I've never seen a dragon, but I can try if I have to. Gandalf didn't say anything, but turned to Balin and said. Keep a copy of the contract in bag end. The next morning, there was another running figure in Hobbiton. In the woods, Levi kept his horse walking slowly to avoid leaving everyone behind. The ponies the dwarves rode were just average, and couldn't compare to Levi's horse at full speed. "Hey, are those diamonds on your horse?" After walking for a while, someone finally spoke up. The dwarves had been staring at Levi's horse armor the whole time. "Yeah, sturdy and useful in combat." "Can I touch it?" "Sure, go ahead." "Oh my god, it's so luxurious. How long would it take to mine enough to make armor like that?" Just as the dwarf was marveling, a voice came from behind. Wait for me." It was Bilbo. With the signed contract, most of the team cheered, some whistled. "Welcome to Thorin Oakenshield's expedition, Mr. Baggins." Soon, Bilbo was on his pony, riding side by side with Levi and Gandalf, chatting. "They bet on whether you'd join. Most bet against you, a few bet you would. What about you?" Snap. Gandalf caught the small bag of silver coins and put it away with a smile. "I never doubted you." Bilbo turned to the other side. Another small bag of silver coins was thrown and caught by Levi. "I'd be happy to add Bilbo to my next adventure story." Being part of the story, it's an amazing feeling, isn't it?